I feel like my face hurts. Like I'm just smiling all the time. I'm so excited for September to get here.
It's always exciting to talk all things SEC, and Alyssa Lang from the SEC Network is jumping on with us. What's your offseason been like? I know you've been pretty busy.
Yeah, it's definitely busy, and college football is sort of the end of a chapter for us at the SEC Network, and then we jump right into basketball season, which is always very active on the men and women's side when it comes to the SEC. There's typically always a team who's in it until the very end. Of course, the South Carolina ladies kept us in it all the way to a national championship this past year, and then we jump right into softball and baseball, and we take that through June, and obviously Ole Miss kept us there all the way to the end there in Omaha. So it's been a great day to be entrenched in the SEC, or a great year, I should say, to be entrenched in the SEC with the amount of success that the league has had. But we've had about 2 weeks, or at least I have over the last 2 weeks, to sort of decompress and get ready for media days and turn our attention to the 2022 season starting up. So I'm ready to get back to it.
I know you've gotten to do some fun stuff, just from sideline reporting to everything else, and there's been this thing like you get to eat all the weird foods and all this stuff. Like, why have they thrown this on you?
Well, I mean, it's an honor, honestly. Like, I'm thrilled to be able to make an excuse to eat great food while we're on the sidelines. But it was actually an idea that my play-by-play partner, Taylor Zarzer, had at the beginning of the season because, we were back from COVID, fans being back in the stands, stadium is at full capacity, and we really wanted to celebrate some of the things that made college football something that we love so much. And a big part of that is food and hometown mom and pop food establishments. So that was sort of one of our goals when we went into conference play, was let's find a place that is famous to each city in the SEC and rep that place. Usually we'd try to do it in the second quarter, and it was great because fans who are watching at home would get really excited that we went to such and such burger place or this donut place that everybody loves. The unfortunate part for me, and the worst one I think, was at Texas A&M. I was eating this burger that I'm sure weighed about 5 pounds, and it was covered in onions and mustard and all this stuff. That part was great. I'm eating it, and then I'm realizing that I'm about 60 seconds away from my halftime interview with Coach Fisher, and I'm like, I'm going to have the worst breath. Like, he's going to be like, what have you been doing for the last 2 hours throughout this game? But it's so much fun, and if anyone has any food recommendations for us this season, I think we're going to do it again. So,
what is the coolest thing, though, you've been able to do with all the – I mean, they've thrown you in the fire on so many different things throughout the years on the SEC Network, but in your opinion, what's the coolest thing you've gotten to do?
Oh, man, there's so many. As a Gamecock alum, this year was really cool being able to be there on the court when Dawn Staley and her team won the national championship. I hadn't been there for their previous one, at least in the building, so really getting to take that in, not only as someone covering the SEC and proud that another national championship is being brought back to the conference, but as an alum, that moment was really special. And really just being able to do interviews with our coaches and athletes across the conference. We got to do some really fun interviews last season. I had a notable interview with Coach Mike Leach after the Vanderbilt game, where he didn't really want to talk about football after that game. It was kind of a boring game, so I don't fully blame him for that. And it was Halloween weekend, and we had talked in the broadcast about his famous or infamous take on candy corn, and he went off about 60 seconds about Nerds clusters. And so that was definitely a memorable moment that I never thought 8-9 years ago when I was working my way through local news that I'd be able to be talking to a SEC head football coach about Nerds clusters on national television, but we made it there.
No, I mean, it literally was everywhere. It went viral. The interesting part of this job is you can get to do a lot of really cool stuff, but I got to think there's nothing more unnerving and just like awful than having to kill time in the studio with rain delays. And it happens all the time in baseball and football and everything. I mean, having to fill time, or are you just like leaning on your producers like, God, find me something?
Sometimes, normally when we're sitting in there, to peel back the curtain, we've got what we would call a 6-box, and it's quite literally 6 TVs attached to this rolling cart thing, and we have all the games on. So we're seriously sitting there watching everything. So you don't really run out of things to talk about, right? Like if I've recapped everything, I can always go in a circle and kind of start over again. But I do remember I think it was the start of this past baseball season. It might have been last year. I can't remember, but it was a South Carolina baseball game, and I think it was in like the 12th or 13th inning. And having gone to school in Columbia, I kind of cracked a joke just between innings when they kicked it back to the studio, and we're going, yep, all right, we're going into inning number 13 here in Columbia. I made a comment, something along the lines of, well, I know where everybody in that stadium is going to be going when this one gets out. The cookout down in 5 Points is open till 4 a.m. And it was funny because Patrick Murphy, the softball coach at Alabama, then hit me up and was like, here's my cookout order. And then that's what the rest of the rain delay turned into. Every time I came back to the studio, I was like, yeah, I'm a tray gal with a burger, cheese fries, milkshake. And so, like, that's the best part of baseball rain delays is that stuff is cool.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you learn a lot about your analysts, so you find something to talk about.
Yeah, no doubt. And Tom Hart, I mean, you could just rip on him for hours upon hours.
Yes.
It's interesting being here for Media Days because, I mean, we get a couple new faces in Brian Kelly and Billy Napier, but I mean, it's I can't remember like this being this stable, I guess, for SEC coaches, and like, and then I look around these rosters and there's so much talent. It's like, how somebody's got to suck, right? I mean, like, it's weird. Somebody's got to lose.
It is hard because you look at this season, and this is the best part about the time of year that we're in right now. I can't remember a season where I've come in here and you look at the amount of programs who are also just so happy with their head coach, right? Like you don't have coaches really coming in on the hot seat, if you will. Like every time we're at Media Days, we're having this conversation of, oh, well, Coach so-and-so's got to win at least X amount of games, or it might be bye-bye for him at the end of the season. And we're not really having that this year. Obviously, there's been some conversation surrounding the Auburn situation and Brian Harsin, but really, I mean, what are you going to do? The guy's going into his second year. Like, what are we really going to do at this point? But, you look at the Shane Beamers of the world, Sam Pittman, Josh Heupel, and you've got those three fan bases who 3, 4, 5 years ago were not expecting anything. And now they're sitting here going, oh, we might be competitive this year.
Right.
Tennessee's sitting here like, if we could knock off Georgia, we could go to Atlanta for a SEC championship game. So you're right. It's nice to not necessarily have so many moving pieces, and the two programs coming in with new head coaches have such high expectations and have such rich histories that I'm really excited to see what they do in their first year.
Do you have a favorite player?
Ooh. So I think this is going to sound like a silly answer because everybody loves Will Anderson. But Will Anderson is one of my favorite interviews. Last season, I got to talk to him a couple of times. After the SEC championship game, he was on my show Out of Pocket halfway through the season, and he's just full of stories, from his sisters, growing up with a bunch of older sisters, to talking smack with Coach Saban during practices. Because he told me this great story about how during practice, it might have been fall camp, that Saban was getting on the referees in their scrimmage saying, Anderson's jumping off sides. Like, you got to call this. And Anderson's like, Coach, I'm not. I'm just fast. Like, I'm just getting in the backfield. Like, what are you talking about? And they had this bet going back and forth, and the refs are telling Saban, no, he's just really good. Like, he's not jumping off sides. He's just really good. So I always enjoy talking to him. Will Levis is another one I think the entire country has fallen in love with. So those are two who I'm really excited.
Banana with a peel on.
And the mayo coffee and all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Alyssa Lang from the SEC Network. Thanks so much for the time. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, more here on SEC Media Days.